Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Products That Count Holiday Edition. Woo! I'm Andrea Chesleigh. I'm the VP of Product at One Kings Lane, but I also lead Products That Count in New York City. So I'm so excited to be here, back in the Bay Area. I just moved back to New York City in January, so it's nice to visit again. Very excited to have everybody here tonight. How many people have been to a Products That Count event before? Wow, lots of people, amazing. So for those who haven't, Products That Count is a community of about 17,000, I think 18,000 now and growing, of community of product managers, innovators, etc. It started here in SF by SC Moati, who you guys know, usually who hosts these events. It's expanded to New York City, as you guys know, and then it's now expanding to San Jose, actually, so starting in February, so very exciting. We host these monthly speaker series. We have rich content, so you guys are getting those newsletters. We have podcasts, so really everything that we can do to sort of bring the community together. For those of you that have been to these events before, we also have a program called Members That Count. So it's for anybody who's been to a Products That Count event for, I think, at least 5 times. You get a card, you get discounts to these events. And so yes, very, very excited. Very exciting. This panel tonight is something I was super excited about. But before I introduce our speakers, I just want to thank Yelp, our venue, who's been our partner since day 1 for Products That Count. So let's give it up for Yelp. Thank you, Yelp. They have some, if you want to learn more about Yelp and their opportunities, Rebecca is here. She's going to be the person sitting underneath that bright red Yelp logo in neon. So go talk to her after the event. And then I also want to thank Pragmatic Marketing. So without them and WeChat, it would not be possible to continue running Products That Count since we are a non-for-profit. All right, so let's get this event started. Very excited to introduce our speakers tonight. You know, it's the end of the year. I'm sure everybody gets very, very reflective of their career, et cetera. So we're hoping you enjoy tonight's panel. Our first speaker is the author of the great book, Cracking the PM Interview. If you haven't read it yet, I recommend it highly. She also heads up Asana and was formerly a PM at Google and Microsoft. Let's give it up for Jackie Bavaro. Here you go, Jackie, sorry. I know, just in your way, sorry about that. Our next speaker is the former CPO at Warby Parker. He used to work also in product at companies like eBay, Netflix, Facebook, and Gilt Group. He's currently the CPO at ArtNet, and he is also here from New York City, like me, so thank you. Chris, welcome Chris Maliwat. I know, and he brought his amazing. All right, our next speaker has led product and design recruiting teams. She is now, for many years, she is now part of the product talent team at Greylock and was formerly at Robert Walters. Welcome, Renee Signore. And last but not the least, our last speaker is the VP of Product at Goodreads, where he heads up the product, design, and customer analytics team. He was formerly at Zilch and Check, and has also worked in product marketing and engineering. So welcome, Brian Rosenblat. All right, I'm gonna sit down too. All right, guys, super excited to have everybody today. I promise I'm not texting, but I have like my questions, so hope you don't mind. All right, guys, so very excited to have you. Thank you for coming to Products That Count SF, or headquarters. It's really a great panel, and let's kick it off. Let's just start with, you guys have had such wonderful careers. I'd love to hear from each of you, just sort of, how did you get your start in product? Let's talk about a little bit about your career trajectory, and really the top 3 skills that have helped you be successful so far. And then for Renee, being in the talent space, what are the top 3 skills that you've seen in the product community that sort of, again, leads you to really approach these this group. Maybe we start with Jackie.
Hi, everybody. Oops. Is it on?
Should be on. There you go.
Hello? Is that working? Yep. Okay, great. Yeah. So, hi, everybody. I'm Jackie. And so a little bit about how I got into product management is I did the traditional route, like the very typical route. So I studied computer science and economics in college. And then when I was looking for summer internships, a friend of mine was like, Jackie, you have to apply to this PM job. It was at Microsoft, so they called it program manager, but the same job. And I was like, no way can I do that job. I'm a sophomore, I can't be a manager. And they were like, Jackie, just don't protest, just like go apply for this job. And I did, and I got it. And I just like on the job learned what it actually was. And I was like, this is the dream job. This is like what I was born to do. So I consider myself very, very fortunate to have learned about PMing like right from the start. And then in terms of my career path, so I was a PM at Microsoft for, I was at Microsoft for 3 years, like a year and a half as a PM and a year and a half as part of their consulting org because I had moved and they didn't have PM jobs in New York. And then I switched over to Google, did 3 years at Google, joined as part of their APM program, graduated the program, and I got to work as a PM there on their search team. And then while I was there, I got a call from a friend who I'd worked with at Microsoft, and he's like, Jackie, let me run a coffee. Let's like talk about this new company I'm at. I learned about Asana. I got to join as the first PM there, and it was a dream come true. And I've been with them for 6 years. So I grew from being the first PM to becoming a manager there. And now we've grown. The team has, I think, about 13 PMs now. So it's very exciting.
That's really amazing. What are your top skills?
Oh, top skills.
Yes.
So, yeah, thinking of top skills. So, one of the like sets of skills that I was thinking about when you asked this is in college and in high school a little bit, I was a debater. I was on the debate team. And I think that through debate, one of the skills that you learn is how to take an argument, take an idea, and break it apart into the component pieces. Understand what are all of the pros and cons of an idea, and learn how to talk through those and take something like big and complicated and amorphous, turn it into small pieces, and then work your way through them. And I think that kind of taking a big problem and breaking it down has been a really important skill.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, if I need some more, I mean, I think we might talk about this later,
Yes,
but I think
yeah.
product strategy is a really important skill as you want to get like further along in your career. And then a really, really simple skill is time management. I think that being on top of your time gives you the ability to take on almost anything else.
Yeah, that's very true. Chris.
Hey, if this is distracting, I can turn it off. I don't know. So I had a slightly circuitous route, but started at the end of the product lifecycle. So I was a human-computer interaction / symbolic systems major down at Stanford, which is a mouthful, I know. I started as a front-end engineer, but I realized that I was building things that I didn't think anyone would know how to use. So I moved from that into user experience and prototyping. So I designed stuff that I thought, and then built the things that I thought people would want to use, but then realized that I didn't think what I built or designed were going to make a difference. And so I stumbled into product management. My first real product management job was actually at eBay, and it was the start of this career where I kind of combined the things lower down the product life cycle, namely the building part and the design part, and found the holy grail of my experiences and to be a product manager. First at eBay, where I was managing the item page and the bidding buying flow there for several years back in the day. So I think from there, my career has really followed my passion of identifying and going to companies that are at the inflection point of businesses or the inflection point of a certain market. So eBay was going from being a domestic business to global. I then moved eventually to Netflix, where I headed the personalization team, and Netflix was going from DVD to streaming. I then skipped over to the East Coast 8 years ago to run product at Gilt Group that was going from a women's ready-to-wear business to everything else, and then joined Facebook, where I was helping manage retail and commerce partnerships. And actually, I think it's an interesting thing to point out that that particular job, I didn't actually have product in the title. I was really an external product manager, which helped shape the internal roadmap through our partnerships with folks like Warby Parker and Target and Walmart. I moved to Warby Parker soon after, where I've really been excited to see that company move from being an online-only product to one that is not just multi-channel, but really a single user goes through at least 2, if not all, of the channels of engagement. So I really like things that combine physical presence, like actual physical bits with online presence, and currently at ArtNet, which is the oldest company I've ever worked for, 30 years old, that builds products for the fine arts industry, specifically museums, galleries, for places like Sotheby's Christie's or fine art holders that are trying to figure out how to price the market, how to price an Andy Warhol or a $460 million Michelangelo, for example. So that was a long sordid history. I think what's the 3 things that I identify as skills that I find important when I think about this, and I think about this perhaps more often than I should, is agility, right? So as my career has progressed and as the industry has progressed, your ability to move quickly on your feet and to recognize when to change path and turn completely different direction really requires you to have more agility, not speed, right? As opposed to speed, you have to listen more and have better sensors out there to kind of make those sharp turns. So agility is the first thing I think about. The second skill that I think is really important and perhaps obvious is portfolio management. I think so many of us in the room, had 5 courses in high school and in college, and you wanted to get all A's. And you think that that's how you're supposed to manage your career and manage your projects. But actually, could be very different from the truth. Portfolio management to me means, you need to take on more than 5 subjects, and you specifically, maybe you want 2 or 3 A's and like 5 to 10 B's, but you also want to have like 3 to 5 D's and F's, right? You decide that you're going to start something, and then you decide to stop that project. And so kind of unscrewing your brain of trying to get all A's, where you're not managing your time and focusing on the wrong level of commitment to projects. That's really important. And I think the last skill, which I think is super important and sometimes hard to hear, is that you have to be really good at delivering bad news. So I used to say you have to get used to saying no, which is obviously a part of that, but I think a PM has to not just say no, but they have to be able to say, that experiment didn't work. Your project idea needs refinement. You have to tell people whose jobs are to do the work that they're doing, that what they're doing isn't necessarily correct, right? So being able to deliver bad news through criticism or saying no, I think is the third thing that I would bring up.
Hi, I'm Renee. I'm not a product manager, but I've been recruiting product managers since 2012. I talk to product managers all day and also people that are hiring product managers. The way I got into recruiting product managers was kind of by accident. I was pre-med in college. I wanted to be an orthodontist, so very different. I moved out here preemptively. I wanted to go to University of San Francisco here in the city, and I didn't get in. And I kind of took a hard look at myself and realized I wasn't that sad about not becoming a dentist, so it probably means I shouldn't do that. And being here in Silicon Valley, you want to touch technology in some way. So I got into recruiting thinking that it would be a way for me to understand different areas of a business, what type of opportunities there were for me. I thought it would be a great way for me to make connections and figure out, I saw it as a stepping stone. I joined a company called Robert Walters, which is a recruiting agency. We partnered with startups here to hire onto their product teams. We started 2 teams. One was product and one was geared towards marketing. I ran the product team, built it out to recruit for product and design. It was the most profitable team at the company because product managers and designers are so hard to find. I found that in then moving to Greylock, where I am now, venture firm, in recruiting for also, again, product and design, the 3 skills that come to mind are maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm recruiting for startups, but adaptability, I think you really need to be able to kind of change your perspective and point of view based on the situation at hand, and oftentimes you can't predict the situation that you're running into, so adaptability has been a big one. This is obvious, but communication, you obviously need to be able to influence and kind of rally different teams with different agendas to get behind the same initiative. And then thirdly, I would say, sorry, it just escaped me. I think playing devil's advocate is pretty big. You don't want to kind of fall in the trap of kind of leading into the most obvious conclusion, but rather pushing the envelope and seeing where that brings the team.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian. I head up product at Goodreads. I would say that I bounced around a lot. I did a lot of different things. I never set out thinking that I wanted to be a product manager. I loved computers, I loved technology, but I was also really passionate about how do you bring products to market, or at least I had this idea that it wasn't just about technology, but how do you change things, or how do you have an impact. So I was also a computer science and economics major. I'm not saying that you have to be computer science and economics, but two of us were. I went the coding route. So in 2000, I worked at Sapient. I was a software engineer there. Very cool time because I got to see a lot of really cool early ideas, most of which flopped and burned out. But it was a great experience. After that, I moved out to the West Coast. And after having been a software engineer for a while, I said, well, this is really cool. I love coding, but I'm not really capturing that. How do I bring products to market? So I did what any good person who wants to learn about business. I went to business school. So I did that for a couple years, and when I was there, I fell in love with marketing. It wasn't what I was expecting to do. I was like, oh, maybe management of technology, and some people went to do product management, but marketing really appealed to me because it was both a mix of, that creativity, but also that deep analytics, and the idea that you could really get to know your customers through data, through surveys. So that was interesting. So at the end of business school, I moved to the East Coast. And then took a job doing marketing for a company called Endeca, which was B2B marketing. I don't think I realized what B2B marketing was at the time, which meant that you were out selling to businesses. And I will tell you, the hardest transition in my career was going from being a software engineer to having to tell a sales team how to sell and get up in front of people and talk. As an engineer, you spend most of your day just doing one thing. You go super deep, and that's what you do. But I think there's something you said about the portfolio management thing, because that was one of the hardest transitions. Was suddenly, I was trying to coach salespeople how to manage 30 accounts at the same time, and that was a weird mental switch. Like most engineers say, oh, being a product manager, sure I can do that. It's just moving pixels around. But really, it's how do you manage a portfolio? How do you keep on top of all sorts of things at the same time? So that was one thing. And the other thing was it taught me customer empathy, really getting outside and understanding people and selling. So having done that for a while, I was selling to online retailers, which is very cool. So I got to actually go out to some of the biggest retail brands, and they would look to me trying to ask how to design their websites, and I'd make something up and tell them and try to sell them some software. But it was a great experience, but I realized I was really passionate about the consumer part. So I looked around. At that point, I said, maybe I want to be a product manager. But instead, I joined a startup. My boss, it was very small, he was the CEO, said, okay, now you're the head of product marketing. It wasn't product marketing. It was you're doing all of product and you're doing all of marketing. Which meant that I was doing everything from working with engineers to figure out what the specs were going to be and designers and trying to put that together, to hopping on a webinar the next day, to figuring out how to do SEO, then running SEM campaigns. So it was a little bit of everything. So I will say, trial by fire. So I did that for a while, and then went back to the West Coast, doing a lot of switching back and forth. My wife's a physician, so a lot of it was her training. So went out there and I said, okay, well, what do I want to do with all these skills? I said, I think now product management seems like a good fit. And I couldn't get a job as a product manager because people said, okay, you've been an engineer, you've done marketing, product marketing, that's not the same thing. So it actually took me a really long time to finally convince somebody I had the skills necessary to do that. I joined a company called Zench, which was like LinkedIn for high school students. Did that, found that I was able to leverage all these schools. They wanted SEO to all these skills, SEO to work. I did SEO. They wanted the analytics, I'd done some of that, and then ultimately we got acquired by Chegg, which is pretty exciting, and I started managing a small product team. 8 months in Chegg, one of my friends who had actually been a software engineer with me a very long time ago back at Sapient at the beginning of this story, said, hey, Goodreads is looking for a product manager. They were smaller, 20 people at the time, first PM. So I said, okay, I'll do that, and fell in love with the company, the team, knew a lot of the people. And I'll tell you, if you're ever looking for something and you really like the people, you have a passion for the product, and there's a great growth opportunity, you should just jump and do that. So I did that. We've grown the team. Now the product team is about 25. I'm the head of product there. It's a mix of product managers, design, user research, data analytics. Goodreads is much bigger. We've become part of Amazon. So it's been a pretty awesome journey. What I would say the top things, so I talked a little bit about customer empathy, having been thrown out there in the sales mix, really having to talk to our customers, super important, just really having a deep understanding, not just for the products you build, but also how do you drive consensus and move things forward. So just trying to understand how to sell and get your ideas across. I'm not going to lie, having been an engineer helps. Certainly working with engineers, but also thinking about how to, at some level, it's, your product is a set of customer experiences, but ultimately it's a system and it has to work together. So being able to think about the product that way is really helpful. So I think that, and I'd second communications, and I think that's something. It's just, again, how do you get your ideas across? So that's my story.
Awesome. So I want to just ask a question maybe towards Jackie for a second here. Jackie, you've written a lot about PM skills in blogs, in your book. Taking communication and taking it a step further, I think one of the key skills for a PM is being able to persuade, right? And leading with influence. And how do you sort of grow that particular skill? What tips and tricks would you give this audience to how to use that skill with their cross-functional partners, their peers, and their stakeholders?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So when I think about stakeholder management and I think about how to be persuasive, I think the root of it is really putting yourselves in the other person's shoes and investigating to understand why they don't already agree with you. So if you kind of put your little detective mystery hat on and you're like, okay, I want to try to convince some people of this. And you're like, here's the idea, here's what I think we should do. And they're like, no, that's a terrible idea. And you've just got to then start to hunt for it and figure out what are they thinking, why don't they agree with me, and what are the either facts or values that they're differing with me on here. So example of this is, I'll go kind of far back in Asana's history, but we had PM and engineer, or designer and engineer were just at each other's throats, totally disagreeing about the right design for a feature. And
which never happens.
Never happens. We were like, what is going on? We got two really smart people who both think the world is going to end if they don't get their way. So we started to talk to each other, and we were asking them well, okay, which way do you think it should be? Why? And they were somebody was well, this way is just so much more powerful. And that's what the engineer says. And then we ask the designer, well, why do you want the other way? And they say, well, this way is so much more usable. The users won't understand it if we do it in this more powerful way. And we realized that when we got to the heart of it, it was the root difference was a disagreement on who our customers were. Were we designing for our power users, or were we designing for new users who are less power users? And once we were able to articulate the question that way, we realized that we could answer that question, figure out who our customer was, and in this case, it turned out to be not power users, and then the decision became really easy that way. So it also goes back to some of the skills from debate that I'd learned, which is that when I see two people who are novices at debate and they try to argue with each other, what you'll see is person A is here's all the reasons why I'm right, and person B says, here's all the reasons why I'm right. And they never address each other. They never talk about the other person's points. They never do a direct rebuttal to what the other person has said. And so I think the exact same skills apply to any kind of persuasion or stakeholder management. It's to get a sense for what does the other person care about? What are they trying to optimize for? Why do they have a different belief than you? And once you've gone into that, you can then figure out like what's the right approach given the different belief they have. So sometimes it's that you have different facts and you can go share your facts with each other. Another time is there's like a question that you can go research and find the answer. Sometimes it honestly has to do with the fact that you're optimizing for two different things. This could happen with like the marketing team, where one team has like a very limited ad budget and they've got a plan for what they're going to do and they have targets they need to reach. And I've had this with the PM team says, but we want to try to experiment in this new area. We think it's really important for this other initiative we're doing. And when you find that you actually have two different goals, it's notice it. And it's not worth it for you to try to like convince this person on another team like to work against their own interests, to work against the goals. Whenever I see that, when I see that our goals are mismatched, it's a good time to escalate and go figure out which person can help balance between those goals. So I would never sit there and just like berate a marketing person for not like missing their targets to help me out. I would go figure out like, okay, well, we better go talk, get the head of product and head of marketing together to talk, and we'll figure out, do we want to shift our team's goals over so that we can make the best optimal decision for the company.
Oh, that's great. And then, speaking of marketing, Brian, you've had such an interesting career trajectory going from very non-product oriented roles and then into product. So specifically, what is something that you've taken away from engineering or marketing that felt very non-traditional product that you still use today in your product role?
Sure. So I can answer both. So in terms of marketing, I talked a lot about, so much of product, building great products is really trying to understand who your customers are. And really that is really what marketing is. It's like deeply understanding your customers and trying to figure out how do you sell them some value that you've got. So to that extent, whenever we build products, really start with, how do you deeply understand the customer? What are your goals? And then it helps me dig a lot deeper, whether it's, through the data analytics or trying to get out there and do customer research or user research. All that background is super helpful, and it also helps me, teach my team how to do it, because it's not something, people come to product management with very different backgrounds. And sometimes, obvious things like know your audience, it's not obvious when you're starting out, but that's one of the key things. It's like, who are you building this for? So marketing is all about knowing your audience and how do you speak to them. So I think that's key. In terms of engineering, certainly if you're working in tech or software, it helps to have that background. I think I mentioned before, it's not just being able to, argue estimates with engineers and say, oh, I know better because I used to be an engineer. Usually I'm wrong at this point anyway. But I do think, the experiences you build, they're ultimately systems. Both the product that you build, but also the organization that you build. Thinking about, so I'll take a step back, but if you think about the product that you're building as just a set of user experiences, and I know a lot of people come from that background, but don't necessarily know how the whole system flows together, it's really easy to optimize in one specific area, or just say, oh, here's a great customer experience. But if you're not thinking about how the whole thing works together, it's easy to miss. So that's one of the ways being an engineer really helps me, is both in terms of talking to the engineers and understanding, but also taking a step back and saying, oh, if you do this thing over here, it might break this thing over here. Or, oh, maybe that's a short-sighted decision, but we should take a step back because, the whole user experience is a system, at least in my mind, and this might have an impact over here, and then help people take a step back and think about how it all works together. So I think that's helped me.
For sure. And then maybe taking a step back, Chris, you teach classes at Cornell and have also taught at First Round Capital's product program and MIT. We've talked about skills and sort of what has made you guys successful. What are the challenges that you've seen, especially with you as you're teaching product managers and aspiring product managers? What are the challenges that you see that they run into, and what is the advice that you typically give them?
Great question. I think that beginning product managers or product managers in the beginning part of their careers tend to spend over-index the amount of time they're spending on what are the features we should build and how should we build them. They kind of engineer the problem. And like my colleagues here mentioned, really focusing way more time on why are you building it and who are you building for is the thing that I constantly have to remind these younger minds. And I think it's just because sometimes those are actually the harder questions to answer. But as many in the room know, if you have those very well defined, or at least as defined as you can, it makes it easier to choose or prioritize what features that you end up building, and then how you build it is really just the end. It doesn't have to define. If you're prioritizing what you're building based on how you're going to build it without having a good sense of who you're building it for or why you're building it for them, you're thinking about it backwards. So I think that you have to remind people to continue to not just as an individual feel like you know what you're doing, but as a group, how have you communicated alignment between people that here's who we're focused on and this is why, from their perspective, from a business perspective, etc.
Got it. And Renee, going back to sort of just recruiting for product managers, you've been doing this for a while. Have you seen any sort of changes in what you guys tend to be looking for in skills for a product manager over time?
Yeah, so when I first got into it, it was 2012, and Zynga was doing very well and had created kind of this prototype of product management that was either former bankers or management consultants, very data-driven. And I tell you, every client I was recruiting for was asking me for a Zynga PM. I think that kind of was the first trend that I noticed, and then over time, I think people realized if you're only optimizing for that and you lose the customer experience, that it's not the full picture. So I think we saw kind of the pendulum swing a bit. Then kind of the next trend I saw was growth coming up as a function, and then it's a very murky line as to like what's growth and what's product management and where's the line in between them. And then you see companies say like, I need a growth product manager, and it's like, well, what does that mean and how does that fit into your organization? And then you see kind of people just sticking this word into their job title because they think that's what they're supposed to be using, not necessarily something that they need. So kind of really the growth PM trend was something that we've seen. I think that's stabilized a bit. And then I would say, everybody's probably heard the consumerization of enterprise. And I think just broadly, things becoming a bit more user-focused and not only on the consumer side. So I would say PMs that have either some sort of design-minded philosophy, or they incorporate that into their process. I would say that's kind of the more recent trend across both consumer and enterprise.
Yeah, totally fair. I want to open up the forum for questions. Before I keep asking, I have so many questions for you guys. You guys are amazing, but I want to give our audience a chance to ask you guys some questions. So I don't know who wants to get started.
Thank you all for sharing the thoughts. I wonder, a few touched the why and who are we building for, why we're doing certain things. So I wonder how you combine kind of like the business and strategy mindset with the product. Sometimes some companies' business and product is together, kind of like chief product officer also oversee the business metrics and everything. But sometimes it's like there's a GM, and so I wonder how you kind of think about the whole landscape of a business and a company together with the product. Thank you.
Great question. Who wants to take that first?
I'll try. So from my perspective, I think the business overall generally has two or more levers to move the business. And one of those, if we just narrow it down to two, that's usually marketing and product, where the marketing lever, right, whether it's generally paid marketing and you can move that lever to most efficiently drive traffic, and the product lever is generally more a longer lead for conversion. So I think that depending on the shape of the organization, the product team will have co-ownership with the business team for the metrics that drive conversion. And obviously, the marketing team has some conversion metrics as well, but they're very focused on traffic driving and driving traffic. So depending on how your organization is shaped, that's how I would differentiate between the overall business strategy and product strategy. But there's different philosophies at different companies that I've been at.
Thank you, the gentleman in the back.
Early in the first question, I feel like a lot of the themes that were coming out were on topic of agility and adaptability and knowing when to make sharp turns. I'm curious, how do you reconcile that versus, sticking to your convictions, and when you think, all these conflicting voices are just noise? Maybe you can elaborate on how you think about that in regards to developing a product and maybe in the context of managing your career as well.
Maybe Brian, do you want to take that?
Sure, that's a good one. That's probably one of the hardest ones too, because there's always a mix of, you think you're right, but then sometimes you're not right, but then sometimes you are. So how do you figure that out? You have to be honest with yourself, and you can't fall so in love with your idea that you don't listen to the voices around you, you don't listen to the data. I think data can be your best friend with some of these things because data doesn't lie. Do the A/B test, look at the data. If you're not getting the traction that you want, you have to force yourself to take a step back and say, well, why is this? And you can either come up with an idea, but be realistic with yourself to try to change your idea and try to move, but at some point you have to, look at the data, talk to your customers. If your customers aren't they might say they love it, but if they're not actually adopting it, you have to be, realistic about that too. So if you get to the point where you're in that situation, again, force yourself to take a step back, erase everything you've done, ask yourself, are there better ideas that I can go after, and try to double down or pivot or however you want to do. And if there aren't, then move on to something else.
Yeah, that's true. I think you had a question.
Sure, yeah. It's more on the hardware side. Nobody gets the first product right. There's always feedback from customer, and what are the considerations for managing version 1.1 versus version 2, and how do you align this to your CEO's goals or your business goals? If you could talk us through that. Software is kind of a little more straightforward than hardware, but if you bring hardware to the mix, that'll be great.
So Goodreads is part of Kindle right now, so maybe I can try to take a shot at this because we've done a lot of integrations on device. So this is a lot of Amazon's philosophy, and different companies have different philosophies about hardware. But if I could sum it up with one thing, just get it out there and learn, and at least that's worked really well for Amazon. Their products aren't perfect, they get things out there, but they're willing to try and take a lot of bets. I think if you wait for perfection, even in hardware, software, it's easy to just get it out there and learn because you can keep iterating. But hardware, I think you can wait till you think it's perfect, but if you're not actually getting something out in front of customers to try to figure out what's not working, then you're wasting time and just thinking about things yourself. So I would say, ship, convince your CEO or your boss or whoever that it's actually better to get something in the hands of real customers and get real feedback than to keep iterating within meetings. And then do that, and also be honest that it's going to fail. So once you get something out there, at least you knew what was wrong with it, and you can try again.
Yeah, and I think I'm thinking back to hardware when we at Netflix, when I was there, we were asked to be a launch partner for the iPad back in the day, and for a long time they didn't give us one, but we knew the dimensions and the weight. So our prototypes were actually wood and plastic with like rolled paper that we would roll through this physical prototype because we had to get something as close to what that reality was. So don't imagine that InVision in software doesn't exist in hardware. There are ways to replicate the physical experience in hardware that are important. Warby Parker does the same thing now with, those millimeters matter in glasses for those of you who wear them. So, doing 3D printing and so forth is a great way to kind of get hardware prototypes going, which again is perhaps obvious, but getting things in hands of real people that are as close to what the end is important.
Yep. Oh, we had another question there.
Yeah, I have a question around product management career tracks. So I'm 4 years into my product management career, and one of the trends I see, as you move up, the product management ladder at a company or even a startup is what areas of skills you want to focus on building as you become, pretty solid in running Scrum teams, as you, already know what to build for and how to build your customers. I see kind of two routes. Number one would be, being really focused on a domain and product area and being a very strong IC in the area. Number two is just being a very solid people manager. And that's kind of where I see, people break off. How did, that process work for each of you personally? And how do you think about it? Or if you have a good framework about thinking about where to build your skill sets?
I can start. So I think that is a belief in the world that you have to choose between one or the other and not necessarily a reality. For me personally, I went from managing a large team to going to be one of 4 product managers at Netflix because their organizational design philosophy was very flat. So I was one product manager that worked with 4 or 5 different Scrum teams, and you push the product thinking all the way through the engineers and designers in a very different way than at eBay was, for example, where there were 45 product managers or something for the same number of users. So I think the way I think about managing your product career is more like having a quiver that you can constantly put in new arrow types in the back so that when you see a problem, you're more equipped with more skills in order to hit the target that's put in front of you. And given adaptability and agility and these other A words that people have, that we've set up here, your career is more about having a diverse set of experiences to draw from so that when you see a pattern, you can recognize it quickly and pick the proper tool to try to hit that target the first time, and then quickly know when you didn't and pick up another arrow and try to hit it another way. So I would be personally very happy being an individual contributor again versus managing a team, and it's more about how does an organization solve the problem, not is my team bigger now than it used to be?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say just a little bit more is, I've been thinking a lot about IC versus manager type roles. And one is definitely, I think that as you grow in companies, a lot of the times you grow from doing sort of more of the execution on a role to doing the strategy of a role. And you might do, sometimes I was thinking about this as when your first PM jobs, you're handed a project to do. And then when you get a little bit more senior, you now you're given a problem area and you have to pick the projects that you want to do. And then when you get a little bit more senior, you're given a company objective and you have to pick what problem areas to go after to best address that objective. So there's this increasing level of scope. And there are IC, just pure IC career tracks. But I'd be kind of curious to see what everybody else's experience is. But from what I've seen, there's actually not that many, because a lot of the times as you get to this more and more strategy, you're defining the strategy for an area that's going to need several PMs to execute on it. And so whether or not you do that as a literal people manager, or you do it as a more architect type role that has that responsibility that people don't report to you, you're still going to be wanting to build up a lot of those people management skills because you're going to be wanting to influence across lots of people. And then one other thing that's come to mind when you're thinking about people management versus IC, you get a little bit of this in ICPM as well, but I sometimes think about this idea of if you're doing your job really well, is anybody mad at you? And I think that for example, if you're an engineer, the answer might be no. If I'm an engineer and I'm doing my job really well, everybody is thrilled with me. When you're a PM, an IC PM, the answer can often still be no. Sometimes you have to deliver bad news, but a lot of the times you can talk about it in terms of people's priorities, and you can do your job really well, and still everybody's happy with you. And I was having a conversation with my manager about a time when something had gone badly, and we were debriefing. He's like, well, why did you do that? And I was like, well, I was afraid to have the conversation with them. And they're like, well, why were you afraid? I was like, I didn't want anybody to be mad at me. And he's like, well, Jackie, what if that's part of your job? It was you're a manager now. Your job is not just to make everybody happy. Your job is to make the really hard trade-offs between between different things. And a lot of the times that will actually make people unhappy, because it's not just like what's the right product choice. It's really like, who's getting the faster career advancement, or who's getting like the juicy project that they want it to be on. And so when you're thinking about careers, I think it is interesting to think about how important is it to you as a job that when you're doing your job well, everybody's happy with you.
Anything to add, Brian or Renee?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is if you're in a spot where you're, wow, I feel like I've learned everything as being an IC, it's not true. Like, you can always learn more. For me, I learned a lot of different specialties before I ever managed people in product management. I would just say that, think outside of what the traditional definition of a product manager is, and go learn marketing, or go learn, spend some time in customer care or some, because all those things will ultimately make you more valuable. And at the end of the day, if your boss thinks you're valuable enough and there are growth opportunities, there'll be a decision, do I bring on someone else or do I put someone underneath you? And if you have enough skill and experience and you can prove yourself, well, they'll be like, well, I want to give you a chance, and potentially start building a team underneath you. So you'll get there. Just use this time to amass as many different skills, arrows, or quivers or arrows in your quiver as you can. I totally agree, because at some point when you do get that opportunity to lead a team, I can fall back on the marketing that I did, or I can think about the data analytics that I did, or even when our site traffic's dipping, I can be like, oh wow, I had to do SEO a long time ago, so I know this type of stuff. So just learn lots of stuff and it will help you.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that in that I see oftentimes people make a mistake early on in their career of moving into management or moving into what they think is a bigger role too early, before they've really kind of gotten those arrows and built those skills. And so the more that you can draw back on as a manager, I think the more effective you become as one. You'll earn that respect from those that you're managing. And then I think the domain expertise thing you brought up is interesting. I think in some ways I see it as something that's highly sought after, but oftentimes I think we're trying to do in tech, you're trying to do something innovative and kind of push the envelope in a new way that oftentimes coming with particular domain expertise might be seen as like a hindrance. Maybe you're coming with some like old school of thought. And so people are open to people that are coming from different areas. So I wouldn't, if you have a particular passion in a space, then absolutely go for it. But I wouldn't say that's the main driver behind making decisions.
Last question.
Hey, so I don't know, this question might be for Renee, but I think all of you probably answered it. So for me, I'm technically not technical, so I'm a communications professional. However, I have been looking at a career transition too. So when it comes to like the people stuff, having hard conversations, all of that, I can do that like pretty well. And so now I'm learning the technical aspect, and like that shit's pretty cool that way. So it's awesome. However, I am curious, like for somebody who's coming from that and where it's more of like the soft skills and then going backwards into technical skills for Renee, but again for any of you, how successful have you seen candidates that have come through that have done it more from the backwards, whether it's boot camps or self-taught or anything like that?
Yeah. Let's see. I think where I'd start my answer with that, usually I see people have most success if they make a transition internally at their company, because you have kind of this institutional knowledge that will be harder to develop if you try to make that switch into a new function at a new company. It can happen, but I think it's more challenging. I think that the boot camps and additional resources that are out there, I'd be curious to hear your guys' perspective. My read on what's most helpful from those is the network that you build, and how that can, that network can speak to your potential, and kind of you tap into their networks and that helps you get a job. Yeah, that would be my initial thought.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of that. I think the internal transfer is one of the best ways to become a PM if you're not a PM today. And the boot camps I don't think I see a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to be a PM, I need this technical thing, I'm going to like teach myself the code. I think it's a waste of your time. I think that there are some companies that really need a technical PM, and I don't think a boot camp is gonna get you the qualifications for that. And then there's a bunch of companies that don't need a technical PM, and what you really need there is someone who respects engineers and is able to have good conversations with them. So someone who I have a bunch of non-technical PMs on my team, a lot of people who transferred from product marketing. And I always tell them, I'm like, you don't need a technical background at all, but you need to talk to your engineers. You need to understand the technical reasons why they're saying something will take a long time or something like that. And I'm like, and I know you can do it. Sit down with your engineer, ask them questions until you understand, and they will be able to explain it to you in a way that you don't need a computer science degree to understand.
Yeah, and just in general, I think focus less. I agree with these guys, of course, but focus less on the technical skills and focus on the building skills, right? I think people, recruiters and people like me who are interviewing these candidates are looking for evidence that you've built something. And building is not just you coding it, right? You could do a lot of different things in order to build something, but taking the time to say, here's who we're building it for, here's a problem that we're trying to solve, and then here's what we've built. Even if you're using Squarespace or some combination of like easy tools to create something, it's more meaningful that you built it based on the overall principles.
So having like a portfolio to show whatever, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, I'll just start. So, having been technical, I used to be biased, saying, oh yeah, you have to have a technical degree to be a PM. Some of my best product managers don't have technical degrees. I think, figure out what it is that you're really passionate about and good at, and then, think about how it applies. So what I'll say is, all these skills are important. Being technical can be important, but some engineers, past me, wouldn't want to talk to a customer for life. I just like, oh, it's people. You have to go talk to them. But I mean, like, if you're a people person, and you're passionate about it, and really getting to the root of customer problems, and really going on and understanding, like maybe your angle is more, user research, really trying to understand, or if you can become a really deep subject matter expert on an area and bring that in. And yeah, if you're working on technical projects, you will have to figure out how to talk to engineers and understand, what an API is and how to, call BS on some of their estimates or go back and forth. But I think, don't try to be something you're not. I would just figure out what it is that you're really good at and how it applies, and I think you can get there that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. The panel will be here. I mean, we still have till about 9 o'clock, where there's still beer, there's still pizza. But before we do that, we usually do our shout out. So what shout outs are, basically it's your 10 seconds of fame. You get to come up front, share anything that you're working on if you're looking for a job. If you have an opening that you'd like to share, you're working on a project, just line up here and you'll get your 10 seconds of fame. All right, let's go. I'm going to borrow a microphone from you guys. Maybe stand over there if you want. Yeah, in the middle. Go for it.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Arushika, and I've started this fitness discovery. It's pretty much a Yelp for fitness classes, and it's called Zidness. It stands for Zumba, yoga, dance, ninjutsu, which is mixed martial arts, exercise, sports and specials. And I'm the founder of it, the product manager of it, the marketer of it. I have a couple of people who are helping me with the team, and the situation that you mentioned before, how the product managers and marketers never really get along, that's exactly what I'm going through right now with my CTO and developers. And I'm not sure, I was just talking to someone, and maybe I need product management experience because they expect me to be the product manager, and I expect them to just get it. So, yeah, and what I'm looking for, I think I'm looking for everything right now. Any help would be great, right from developers, marketers, PR. So I thought, never lose a chance to PR when you're starting up. I have just launched the apps on both the stores with 50 best classes, which are all within a mile of downtown, so it'll be useful for all of you, I think. So it's called Zidness, Zumba, yoga, dance, ninjutsu, exercise, sports, and specials. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name's Kevin Lynn. Right now I'm an aspiring product manager trying to find a role in product, looking for any junior PM roles or APM roles, trying to really get into product management. I'm also working on a project right now, which is essentially a chat for HR managers to employees, essentially. Like, hey, you have a problem, you go to the app and you will chat with an HR expert. I'm trying to figure that out. If anyone has any advice or wants to work on a project with me, please reach out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Scott Hanford. I'm the head of growth at a company called Canvas, and we're hiring a lot of PMs actually. So if you are interested in leaving your job and becoming a lead PM, a regular product manager on the team, or product designer or experienced designer, we're hiring a lot of people. We were acquired by Ford last year, and we're trying to double the team the next about 12 months, and we're focused on basically building an alternative to car ownership, subscription alternatives. A lot of companies have come out with similar products actually in the last couple months, and so if you're interested at all in the automotive space or building kind of more CRM-based products, this is a pretty interesting opportunity to work on some very unique telematics and CRM type software. So come talk to me afterwards. We're trying to hire a lot of people. So.
Hi, I'm Mike. I am one of the co-founders of a company here in San Francisco called Motive. We developed this little product right here. This is actually a fitness tracker in the shape of a ring. And it's a hardware and software combination, and we're looking for really talented senior product managers to help us grow the company. It's a hard thing to do when you're trying to change behaviors, and this is in a very crowded space where you got these other great products around, and this one here, the Misfit Shine. I'm actually wearing two of them, but if you're a talented product designer that's very user-centric and really love how to change behavior in the health space, please see me afterwards.
Hi, my name is Inan. I'm a product designer, UX, UI designer, looking for a job. My main past experience and current interest is consumer-facing mobile products. And you can go to this link, inan.design, for my portfolio, and then it looks like this.
Hi there, my name is Sid. I'm the founder, CEO of a marketing tech startup called Intempt Technologies. And I have two things to offer the group here. One, I was a product manager for many, many years on Adobe Marketing Cloud. So if there's anyone that wants guidance on product management, transition from product management to entrepreneurship for B2B enterprise software, marketing software, maybe I can help. That's one. Two, my startup has built a product for consumer service companies like Yelp and e-commerce companies to be able to personalize the visitor's experience in the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9-minute sessions that consumers do on these websites before they bounce. So if you are a marketer in consumer services or in e-commerce and you're interested in getting people to do certain things on your sites, then come talk. We have, after our initial case studies, in order to grow faster, we are now offering a product and services for free until we get you lift or more orders and revenue. So those are my two offers for the group. Thanks.
Hi everyone. So I am just here because I'm very passionate about enterprise technology, and I want to find other people who love building enterprise products and have more discussions around that. So I'm currently at a startup called Reltio, and then before that, I spent 3 years at Salesforce. But one of the biggest questions I've always had was, how do you build a really great enterprise platform and a community to collaborate around, like frameworks for that? Because that's one gap I've had, in whenever I look for resources or whenever down the line I want to build an enterprise platform. It's hard to talk to people about how you price a subscription model, how do you talk to partners, how do you measure success when your product is for developers. So just would love to meet new friends who want to talk about those things. That's all. Great, awesome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Francisco Eisenberg. I work for a company called Carbon Lighthouse. We're a mission-driven company. We're here to try to stop climate change. So the way we do that is by looking for ways to reduce the energy use of commercial buildings. Right now, we are actually hiring software developers, but we're really building out that team quickly, and I think in the near future, we're going to be hiring product managers. So for right now, I just want to get my name out there, the Carbon Lighthouse name out there, and yeah, hope to see you guys in a few months.
Hi everyone, my name is Mick and I'm actually in marketing, not in product, but I would like to highlight the book we recently wrote with Executive Vice President at Marketo and Mickey Allen, who sold his previous company to Marketo as well. We wrote this book, Mastering Product Experience and Product Growth. I think you'll find a lot of interesting things here. We wrote it for SaaS companies specific. The interesting part there that you will find the way and some strategies that product managers use to increase product adoption, to improve product experience, as well as understand what is the tracking and metrics that you should be worrying about in SaaS. Thank you. And my name is Mick, by the way.
Hello, my name is Ben Paul. If you're interested in getting into data analytics, I'm happy to talk to people. I'm an analytics manager at a mental health app, and I'm just happy to help anyone who wants to get into the field of data.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vicky Nguyen. I just recently graduated from product school. Prior to that, I have some experience in developer marketing from Salesforce, and I also did join a developer boot camp because I'm really emphasizing on understanding working with engineers because that's not the easiest thing to do. So if anyone is interested in speaking with me because you're looking to hire an associate product manager, I would be really happy to speak with you as well. I think the main thing that I'd like to work on next is a project that is geared towards building a strong social ecosystem where you feel like you have a voice. And I would say that that would be something I'd like to do in the next coming years. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mariah. I work at Pandora, the radio app, not the jeweler. I do product strategy and product marketing. I'm looking to break into product management. I also did product school last year. So if anyone has tips for how to break into that with my background, I would love to talk to you. Also interested in associate PM jobs or working on side projects. So thank you.
Our last one.
My name is Valerie Demicheva, and I work at Frame, and I'm just here to learn more about product management because we're a startup and I wear every hat. So if you know how to fundraise for Series A, talk to me, please. We could do like a knowledge exchange kind of thing. I was a journalist for many years for the Chronicle, so anything in like consumer, fintech, fitness gear, whatever, IoT, come talk to me. And what else? Oh, and if you're a B2B kind of product in the auto space, maybe we can be partners because I also wear that hat. So holla at me.
Alrighty. So okay, just one more.
We need talent, so.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm actually a career product manager. I've recently joined a design agency called Redshift. They actually pulled me out of Panasonic where we launched Smart Cities together. We are a design, UX, visual, and engineering group, and we're always looking for talent. So if you know any good product designers, you know any great product people, we'd love to be introduced. We're also a partner of the Products That Count group, so if you read the newsletter, please look for our little editorials, and please reach out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, so the last thing we're going to do before I let you guys go and enjoy the rest of the pizza, the photo booth, the desserts, etc., is finding out who won the ugly sweater contest. So there should be 5 of you. I know. So Chris is totally disqualified. I don't think anybody on the panel, you know, it's just, we're just here in spirit. So Chris, exactly. After all, that's what product managers do, right? Okay, so you should have received, there should be 5 of you who have these ugly sweater cards. Can you come right up? Because now we're going to have to judge the top 3. So just so you guys know, the top 5 receive an Amazon gift card. Yes, Amazon gift card. And now we're going to judge our top 3 by applause. So please clap hard for your favorites. So the top 3 get to have lunch with SC, which is really awesome, right? So, okay. Julia. Try to remember the decibel level. Layla.
Oh, this is Aaron and I'm John.
Aaron and John. Okay, you're together. Kevin. And Lynn. It's all about the same. It's all about the same, right? I feel like let's try this again very fast, guys. Come on, you got to make a difference here. Julia. Layla. Aaron and John. Right. Kevin. And Lynn. I feel like it's definitely Lynn. Layla, right? And we're going through this. Julia. It's very hard. Julia, one more time. Kevin, one more time. All right, so we have Kevin, Lynn, and Layla as our winners. We're going to have lunch with SC. That was hard. Oh, my goodness. All right, guys, thank you so much. Keep Yelp clean. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
I know I did. We need to do
What's that?
Oh no, actually, no, last week.
Oh, you're saying I'm the only one?
No, I'm saying I wanted
Oh, okay. Like, I feel like you have some association with this.
Yeah, I do. I worked with the same nice capture, and I continue.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So I don't dry can. I actually don't Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Anytime. Typically, not just breaking a piece.